Listen closely, because this is not one of those messages you can casually hear and then forget. This is not background noise for your day. This is not entertainment for your mind. This is a serious instruction, and deep down, you already feel it. You already sense that something important is happening in your life right now. Something is shifting. Something is awakening. Something is being demanded of you at a level you can no longer ignore. This is for the chosen ones, the ones who have walked through confusion, through isolation, through moments where nothing made sense, but somehow you kept going. You kept believing, you kept searching. And now the instruction has arrived, clear and direct, and it's not something you can afford to take lightly. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey where God stops whispering and starts speaking with unmistakable clarity, not because you are in trouble, but because what is coming next is too important for you to miss. You have reached a point where delay is no longer protection, where comfort is no longer a blessing, where staying the same has become the real danger. This instruction is not meant to scare you, but it is meant to wake you up. Because what you do after hearing this will determine whether you move into your calling or remain stuck in a cycle that was never meant to be permanent. You've been feeling the pressure, haven't you? That inner nudge that refuses to go away, that quiet voice reminding you that you were created for more than this routine, more than this level, more than this version of yourself. You've tried to ignore it, to drown it out with distractions, with excuses, with busyness, but it keeps coming back, stronger each time, because destiny does not give up on those who are truly chosen. And now the instruction is simple but serious. Pay attention, take action, stop delaying what you already know you must do. The reason this feels heavy is because it matters. If it didn't matter, it wouldn't follow you into your quiet moments. It wouldn't rise up when you try to sleep. It wouldn't be there when you look at your life and realize that something has to change. You've prayed for clarity, and now clarity has arrived. But clarity always comes with responsibility. Once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see, you can't pretend you're blind. And this is where many chosen ones fall short, not because they are incapable, but because they are afraid of what obedience will require. You see, ignoring this instruction won't just delay your progress, it will cost you something you can never get back. Time, opportunities, alignment. There are doors waiting for you, but they are not going to stay open forever. There are people you are meant to impact, but they cannot be reached by the version of you that refuses to move. There is a future calling, your name, but it cannot meet you where you are currently hiding. This is not punishment. This is preparation. And preparation is rarely comfortable. Think about how many times you felt like giving up, how many times you felt overlooked, misunderstood, underestimated. All of that was shaping you, strengthening you, building endurance within you. But now the season has shifted. This is not the time for more preparation. This is the time for execution. The instruction is not complicated. It's the obedience that feels difficult, because obedience requires surrender. It requires trust. It requires you to step forward before you feel completely ready. The chosen ones are never chosen because they are perfect. They are chosen because they are willing to listen, willing to grow, willing to obey even when the path is unclear. And right now, the instruction you've received is the bridge between who you have been and who you are becoming. If you walk across it, your life will expand in ways you cannot yet imagine. If you refuse, you will stay trapped in a familiar struggle that will slowly turn into regret. You don't want to look back one day and realize that you heard the call but chose comfort instead. You don't want to see someone else living the life that was meant for you because you hesitated when it was your turn to move. This is not about comparison, it's about alignment. What is meant for you will not pass you by, but you can pass it by if you continue to ignore the instructions given to. Your spirit, there is a reason this message found you today. There is a reason your attention is here instead of somewhere else. Nothing about this moment is random. You are being reminded of who you are and what you carry. You are being called higher, deeper, stronger. And yes, the instruction may feel inconvenient, but inconvenience is often the doorway to transformation. You've survived too much to stay small now. You've been brought through too many storms to settle for a life that doesn't reflect your true potential. The instruction is not meant to burden you, it's meant to free you. Free you from doubt. Free you from stagnation. Free you from the version of yourself that no longer fits the assignment on your life. Some of you already know exactly what this instruction is. It's that conversation you've been avoiding, that step you've been postponing, that habit you've been refusing to release, that leap you've been too afraid to take. God has been patient with you, but patience does not mean permission to remain stuck. There is grace for your journey, but grace also empowers you to move. Chosen ones, this is the moment where you decide who you are really going to be, not in words, but in action, not in intention, but in execution. Your future is watching you right now. Your younger self is watching you right now. And deep down, you know that ignoring this instruction will create a regret that no amount of success later can fully erase. You are not being rushed. You are being activated. You are not being pressured. You are being prepared. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. This instruction is a sign of trust. It means you are ready for the next level, even if you don't feel like it yet. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. Let go of the idea that you need more time. What you really need is more courage. Let go of the idea that you need more confirmation. What you really need is more faith. Everything you've been asking for is on the other side of the eerie thing you've been avoiding. And the longer you delay, the heavier this message will feel. But listen, you are not alone in this. Every chosen one goes through this moment of reckoning, this moment where the path splits, and you must choose between fear and faith. And yes, fear will speak loudly. Fear will remind you of past failures, of what could go wrong, of who might judge you. But faith will quietly remind you of who called you and why. This is not about being fearless. This is about being faithful. Faithful to the instruction, faithful to the vision, faithful to the version of you that God sees, even when you can't fully see it yet. And if you obey, even trembling, even uncertain, even imperfect, you will look back on this moment as the turning point that changed everything. Right now, something is stirring inside you, a mix of conviction and hope. That's not accidental. That's alignment. That's awakening. That's the chosen one within you rising to the surface and saying, enough is enough, it's time to move. Don't silence that voice again. Don't scroll past this moment in your spirit. Don't treat this as just another message, because some messages are invitations and some messages are instructions. This is an instruction, and what you do with it will echo for the rest of your life, in ways you cannot yet fully measure, in doors that will open, in chains that will break, in strength that will rise from places you thought were empty, in clarity that will replace confusion, in peace that will replace anxiety, in purpose that will replace wandering, in boldness that will replace hesitation, in light that will replace the long season of waiting. And as you begin to lean into this instruction more deeply, you will start to notice that everything around you is subtly shifting. Your thoughts, your reactions, your priorities, your courage, your discernment. And the more you lean in, the more you realize that this moment is not just about one decision, but about a complete alignment with who you were always meant to become. And that realization alone will begin to change the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you dream, the way you see your future unfolding before you, one obedient step at a time, even when you don't have all the answers yet, even when the full picture is still forming, even when your hands are shaking but your heart is steady, because somewhere deep within you, you finally understand that this instruction is not here to control you, but to call you forward into the life that has been waiting for your yes all along. And as you breathe that in, as you allow that truth to settle into your spirit, you may feel the weight of responsibility, but you will also feel the rise of strength, the kind that only comes when you stop running and start responding. When you stop doubting and start trusting. When you stop asking for signs and start becoming the sign. And in this space, right here, right now, the journey continues. And as you move forward from this awareness, you'll start to recognize how many times you were protected without realizing it. How many moments that felt like rejection were actually redirection. How many delays were divine pauses meant to save you from stepping into something before you were ready. That's why this instruction feels different. It doesn't feel like confusion anymore. It feels precise. It feels intentional. It feels like the final confirmation you didn't even know you were waiting for. You may notice that certain distractions are losing their grip on you. Things that once entertained you now feel empty. Conversations that once mattered now feel shallow. Environments you once tolerated now feel heavy. This is not you becoming disconnected from life. This is you becoming aligned with purpose. When alignment happens, tolerance for misalignment disappears. That's how you know you're growing. That's how you know the instruction is active within you, reshaping your discernment from the inside out. The chosen ones often walk a lonely stretch right before expansion, not because they are abandoned, but because they are being refined. Isolation sharpens clarity. Silence strengthens intuition. And right now, you're being invited into a deeper level of trust, not in circumstances, not in people, but in the one who planted this calling within you long before you ever questioned your worth. That's why this instruction doesn't come with a full map. It comes with direction. And direction is all you need for the next step. You might still be wrestling internally, wondering if you're truly capable of what's being asked of you. That doubt is familiar. It's been with you before. But notice how it no longer has the same authority. It speaks, but it doesn't rule, because something stronger has taken root. A quiet confidence, a steady resolve, a knowing that even if you don't get everything right, obedience will carry you further than perfection ever could. This is where your discipline becomes your devotion. Not just what you say you believe, but how you move when no one is watching. How you respond when the old patterns try to pull you back. How you choose growth over comfort, truth over approval, obedience over excuses. Every small decision now carries weight, not pressure, but purpose. You're no longer moving randomly. You're moving intentionally. And let's be honest, part of you is grieving the version of yourself that can't come with you anymore. The old habits, the old mindset, the old survival mechanisms that once kept you safe but now keep you small. It's okay to acknowledge that. Growth always includes a letting go, but what you're releasing is not greater than what you're receiving. It only feels heavy because you carried it for so long. You're stepping into a season where clarity replaces confusion, but clarity also removes excuses. You can no longer say you didn't know. You can no longer say you weren't sure. The instruction has made itself known, and now the responsibility shifts to you. Not to be flawless, but to be faithful. Not to have everything figured out, but to move anyway. There will be moments ahead where resistance shows up disguised as logic. It will tell you to wait a little longer, to prepare a little more, to get one more sign. But remember, preparation without movement becomes procrastination, and signs follow obedience, not the other way around. When you move, the path reveals itself. When you stay still, uncertainty grows louder. Pay attention to who supports this version of you. Pay attention to who questions. Not everyone will understand the shift, and that's okay. Understanding is not a requirement for obedience. Some people are only assigned to past versions of you. Others are aligned with where, why, or going. Discernment will show you the difference, and you'll learn to bless what was without dragging it into what will be. You're being trained to trust the instruction even when it stretches you, especially when it stretches you, because stretch is evidence of capacity expanding. Muscles only grow under resistance. Purpose only unfolds under pressure. And you were not called to live a life that feels safe but unfulfilled. You were called to live a life that feels meaningful, even when it feels challenging. The more you lean into this, the more you'll realize that fear hasn't disappeared. It's just lost its control. It can no longer decide for you. It can no longer silence you. It can no longer convince you that you're not ready. Readiness comes from obedience, not from waiting until you feel confident. Confidence grows after you move, not before. There will be days where progress feels slow, where results are not immediate, where it seems like nothing is changing. Don't let those days discourage you. Seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. Just because you can't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. Alignment often works quietly before it becomes visible. And as you continue, you'll start to notice how your inner dialogue shifts. The way you speak to yourself becomes kinder, stronger, more intentional. The constant self-doubt begins to fade, replaced by self-respect. Not arrogance, not ego, but a grounded understanding of who you are and what you carry. You stop seeking permission to be who you were created to be. This instruction is teaching you to lead yourself before you lead anything else, to honor your word, to follow through, to show up even when motivation is low. Because discipline outlasts emotion, and the life you're stepping into will require consistency, not just passion. Passion ignites the journey. Discipline sustains it. You're also learning that obedience doesn't always make life easier, but it makes it clearer. You may still face obstacles, but you won't be confused about your direction. You may still encounter resistance, but you'll know why you're pushing through. Purpose gives pain meaning. Direction gives struggle context, and that changes everything. As this unfolds, you may feel moments of deep peace, even in the midst of uncertainty. That peace is not circumstantial. It's confirmation. It's the signal that you're aligned, even if the outcome is still forming. Peace doesn't mean the absence of challenge. It means the presence of trust. You didn't come this far by accident. Every experience, every delay, every disappointment was shaping your discernment for this moment. And now that you're here, the only real risk is going back to sleep. The only real loss would be ignoring what has been awakened within you. This is not the time to shrink. This is not the time to negotiate with fear. This is the time to honor the instruction with action, even when action feels uncomfortable, even when it requires sacrifice, even when it asks you to step beyond what feels familiar. Because familiarity is not the same as safety, and comfort is not the same as fulfillment. You're learning to choose depth over ease, truth over illusion, purpose over pattern. And as you keep moving, step by step, you'll begin to understand that this instruction was never about restriction. It was about release. Releasing you into alignment. releasing you into clarity, releasing you into the version of yourself that no longer doubts the call, but walks in it steadily, intentionally, without needing applause or approval, guided by an inner knowing that grows stronger with every obedient choice, every surrendered fear, every moment you decide to trust the process, even when the process stretches you further than you thought possible. And in that stretching, something powerful continues to form, something that cannot be rushed, something that cannot be forced, something that unfolds as you keep responding, keep listening, keep moving forward into what is still becoming clear. And the deeper you move into this obedience, the more you'll realize that what once felt impossible is slowly becoming familiar. Not easy, but familiar. Your capacity is expanding, and with it, your tolerance for discomfort grows stronger. You're no longer shocked by resistance. You expect it. You understand now that resistance is not a sign you're doing something wrong, but often a confirmation that you're doing something right. Growth attracts friction. Purpose challenges comfort. And you're learning how to stay steady in the middle of both. You may start to notice how your reactions change. Situations that once triggered insecurity now reveal wisdom. Criticism that once silenced you now sharpens you. Delays that once frustrated you now teach you patience. This is not emotional numbness, this is emotional maturity. You are no longer governed by impulse, but guided by intention. The instruction is settling into your character, not just your thoughts. There's also a refining happening in how you see yourself. You're beginning to separate your identity from your outcomes. You're understanding that failure does not define you and success does not complete you. Obedience anchors you beyond both. That's why this season feels grounding. You're no longer chasing validation. You're responding to alignment. And that shift changes everything. Some days the weight of responsibility may feel heavy. The awareness that what you do matters, that your choices ripple outward, that your obedience affects more than just you. But remember, you were not given this instruction without being given the strength to carry it. Strength doesn't always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like persistence. Sometimes it feels like showing up again when you're tired. Sometimes it feels like choosing integrity when shortcuts are available. You're learning that obedience often looks ordinary on the outside, but transformative on the inside. It's in the daily decisions, the quiet consistency, the moments no one applauds. This is where real change takes root, not in dramatic leaps, but in faithful steps. And those steps are building something within you that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. There will be moments when the old version of you tries to resurface, reminding you of past limitations, whispering doubts you thought you had already overcome. Don't panic when that happens. Awareness is not regression, it's refinement. Each time you choose differently, each time you respond with growth instead of fear, you reinforce the new foundation being built within you. You might also notice that your patience is being tested more than ever, not as punishment, but as preparation. What you're stepping in to requires endurance. It requires the ability to hold vision without immediate evidence, to trust process without constant reassurance. And patience is the muscle that allows vision to stay alive during the waiting. This instruction is teaching you how to stand firm without becoming rigid, how to stay open without becoming distracted. You're learning balance, discernment, timing. These are not skills you acquire overnight. They're developed through lived experience, through moments of uncertainty where you choose trust anyway. As your alignment deepens, your awareness sharpens. You start noticing patterns you once ignored, cycles that no longer serve you, doors that look appealing but feel wrong, and you no longer feel the need to force clarity. You wait for peace. You listen for resonance. You trust that what aligns will remain and what doesn't will fall away without struggle. There is also a quiet courage forming within you. Not loud, not performative, but steady. The kind of courage that doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up in boundaries, in honesty, in the willingness to be misunderstood for the sake of truth. This courage wasn't given to you all at once. It's being built moment by moment through obedience. You may feel moments of loneliness along this path, but they won't feel empty. They'll feel spacious. Like room is being made for something new, something aligned, something real. And you'll begin to value solitude, not as isolation, but as clarity. A place where you can hear without interference, where your intuition can speak without competition. The instruction is also teaching you how to release control, how to stop trying to manage outcomes and start trusting direction. Control once felt like safety. Now it feels like limitation. And surrender, once feared, now feels like freedom. Not because everything is predictable, but because you're no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. As you continue, you'll find that your faith becomes more embodied, less theoretical, less conditional. You no longer believe only when things go well. You believe because you've seen what obedience produces over time. You've experienced the peace that comes from alignment. And that peace becomes your anchor when circumstances fluctuate. You'll also notice that your voice begins to change, not necessarily louder, but clearer. You speak with intention. You listen with presence. You're no longer rushing to be understood. You trust that what's meant to land will land, and what doesn't is not yours to chase. This is where self-respect deepens. You stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. You stop shrinking your truth to avoid discomfort, not out of rebellion, but out of integrity. You understand now that honoring the instruction within you requires honoring yourself as well. There will be times when the path ahead still feels unclear, when the destination feels distant. But the difference now is that you're no longer paralyzed by that uncertainty. You move anyway. You trust that clarity unfolds through movement, not contemplation alone. Each step reveals the next, and that is enough. You are becoming someone who can hold responsibility without losing humility, vision without arrogance, confidence without comparison. This balance is rare, and it's being cultivated deliberately, carefully, intentionally, and it's why the process cannot be rushed. You may also begin to sense that your presence affects rooms differently now, not because you demand attention, but because you carry intention. People feel grounded around you. Conversations deepen, energy shifts. This is not something you force. It's something that emerges naturally when alignment becomes internalized. As this continues, the instruction becomes less about doing and more about being consistent, being honest, being available to growth. And from that state of being, right action flows more naturally. You stop overthinking every move. You trust your discernment. You respond instead of react. There will still be moments of fatigue, moments when you question whether the effort is worth it. In those moments, remember that fatigue is not failure. It's a signal to rest, not to retreat. Rest restores clarity. Retreat abandons alignment. And you're learning the difference. You're also learning that obedience doesn't isolate you from joy. It deepens it. Joy becomes quieter, steadier, less dependent on external highs. It shows up as contentment, as gratitude, as the ability to be present without needing constant stimulation. This instruction is reshaping how you define success. It's no longer just about achievement. It's about alignment, about peace, about integrity, about knowing that your life is pointed in the right direction, even if you haven't arrived yet. And as you keep walking, keep listening, keep responding, you'll begin to understand that this journey is not linear. There will be pauses, detours, unexpected turns, but none of them are wasted. Each one contributes to your discernment, your resilience, your depth. You are no longer becoming. You're becoming aware of what has been forming all along. And that awareness brings responsibility, yes, but it also brings confidence. A grounded confidence that doesn't rush, doesn't compare, doesn't panic when timelines shift. You're learning how to stay present without losing vision, how to honor the now while moving toward what's next. This balance is delicate, and it's being refined through lived obedience, through daily choices that seem small but accumulate into transformation. And somewhere in the midst of all this, you realize that the instruction was never meant to be a burden. It was an invitation into depth, into clarity, into a life lived with intention rather than reaction. And as that realization settles, it opens space for even deeper awareness, deeper trust, deeper commitment, and the journey continues unfolding layer by layer, step by step, revealing more as you remain willing to listen, willing to move, willing to stay aligned with what is still quietly, powerfully becoming. And as this willingness deepens, you begin to notice that time itself feels different. You're no longer rushing to arrive, no longer measuring your worth by how fast things manifest. You're learning the rhythm of alignment, the pace at which things unfold when they are built to last. Speed once felt like progress. Now presence feels like power. You understand that what is rushed may impress, but what is rooted will endure. You also start to recognize how often you used to abandon yourself for approval. How many times you said yes when your spirit said no. How many times you silenced your intuition to avoid conflict. That awareness it brings shame anymore. It brings clarity. Because now you choose differently. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And intention changes the outcome even when the road remains challenging. There is a sharpening happening in how you discern truth. Not just what sounds right, but what resonates deeply. You no longer confuse noise with guidance. You can sense when something is aligned and when it's simply appealing. This discernment is one of the quiet gifts of obedience. It protects you without isolating you. It guides you without controlling you. At times, you may feel like you're shedding layers faster than you can explain. Old beliefs dissolve. Old fears loosen their grip. Old identities feel unfamiliar. This can feel disorienting, but it's not loss. It's integration. You are becoming more whole, less fragmented, less divided between who you are and who you pretend to be. The instruction is also teaching you how to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it, to let questions exist without demanding immediate answers, to trust that not knowing does not mean you're lost. It simply means you're in the middle of becoming. And becoming is never neat. It's honest, it's raw, it's real. You may notice that your prayers shift. They become less about asking for things and more about asking for clarity, strength, alignment. You stop begging for outcomes and start asking for wisdom. This shift changes how you experience faith. It becomes a relationship rather than a transaction, a conversation rather than a performance. As you continue, you'll realize that obedience doesn't remove challenge, but it removes confusion about why the challenge exists. You know what your bill? Ding. You know what you're honoring. And that knowledge gives you endurance. You don't quit when things get hard because hard no longer feels meaningless. There will be moments when the world around you seems to move faster, louder, more chaotic. But inside there is a steadiness growing, a calm that doesn't depend on circumstances lining up. This calm is not passivity, it's groundedness. It allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. You also become more selective with your energy, not out of selfishness, but stewardship. You understand now that your energy is a resource and where you invest it matters. You stop trying to save everyone. You stop carrying responsibilities that were never assigned to you. This lightness is not detachment, it's alignment. The instruction invites you into deeper honesty with yourself. You stop romanticizing potential and start honoring consistency. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start working with the moment you're in. You realize that growth doesn't require ideal conditions. It requires commitment. There will be times when your progress is invisible to others, when your obedience is misunderstood or unnoticed. Let that be okay. Some of the most important work happens beneath the surface. Roots grow in darkness. Foundations are laid quietly. And when the structure rises, it stands because of what was built unseen. You may feel moments of grief for what could have been if you had known sooner. Be gentle with yourself in those moments. You did the best you could with the awareness you had. Regret loses its power when it's met with compassion. And compassion creates space for continued growth. As your ligament strengthens, you begin to attract experiences that mirror your intention. Not because life becomes perfect, but because it becomes coherent. Things make sense. Even the challenges feel purposeful. Even the delays feel instructional. You trust the process because you trust the direction. You also start to see that obedience is not about losing yourself. It's about finding yourself beneath the layers of fear and expectation. The more you respond to the instruction, the more authentic you become. You speak from truth rather than performance. You act from conviction rather than comparison. There will be moments when you feel stretched beyond what feels comfortable, when the assignment feels bigger than your confidence. In those moments, remember that calling always exceeds comfort. If it didn't, it wouldn't require faith. You are not expected to feel capable. You are expected to be willing. This season teaches you how to hold tension without breaking. The tension between patience and action, between humility and confidence, between surrender and responsibility. This balance is delicate, but it's also powerful. It keeps you grounded while allowing you to grow. You begin to notice how your inner world becomes more spacious. Thoughts slow down, clarity sharpens. You're no longer crowded by constant self-criticism. There is room to breathe, room to listen, room to choose. And with that space comes creativity. Ideas emerge, vision expands. You see possibilities where you once saw limitations. This is not imagination running wild. This is purpose awakening. When alignment clears the noise, inspiration has room to speak. You're also learning to forgive yourself for constant hesitation, for moments when fear won. Forgiveness doesn't erase responsibility, but it releases you from being trapped in what cannot be changed. And release is necessary for movement. The instruction continues to unfold in layers. What began as a clear directive now reveals deeper meaning. You realize it was never just about one decision. It was about a way of living, a posture of listening, a commitment to respond rather than resist. You may still have days when doubt whispers, when old insecurities try to resurface. Let them pass without engagement. You don't need to defeat every thought. Some thoughts lose power simply by being ignored. Your focus has shifted, and focus determines direction. As you walk this path, you start to recognize your own resilience, not the kind that hardens you, but the kind that softens you without breaking. You become flexible, adaptable, rooted. You bend without losing integrity. You adjust without losing vision. This journey also teaches you how to wait without stagnating, to prepare without panicking, to hope without forcing. Waiting becomes active. It becomes intentional. It becomes a form of trust rather than avoidance. You might notice that gratitude deepens, not because everything is going right, but because you can see how far you've come. You honor progress even when it's incomplete. You celebrate growth even when it's ongoing. And as this continues, you realize that the instruction was never meant to lead you away from yourself. It was meant to lead you into yourself, into the version of you that listens, responds, grows, and trusts the unfolding without needing constant reassurance. You are learning how to stay when it would be easier to quit, how to speak when it would be easier to stay silent, how to move when it would be easier to delay. These choices shape you more than any outcome ever could. The journey does not demand perfection. It demands presence. It asks you to show up as you are, with honesty, with humility, with courage. And each time you do, something within you settles more deeply into alignment. You are not chasing purpose anymore. You are walking with it. And that shift changes how you experience everything. The pressure lifts, the comparison fades, the fear softens. What remains is commitment. And as you continue forward, listening, responding, adjusting, trusting, you begin to sense that this path is still revealing itself, that there is more to learn, more to release, more to embody. And instead of feeling overwhelmed by that, you feel ready. Not because you know everything, but because you trust the process of knowing as you go, staying open, staying grounded, staying aligned, allowing the instruction to keep shaping you in ways that are still unfolding, still becoming, still quietly, steadily moving you forward. And now, as everything you've heard settles into the deepest part of you, understand this clearly: this moment was never accidental. You were meant to hear this because you are meant to respond to it. The instruction you've been carrying is not a threat. It's an invitation into alignment, into maturity, into the life that waits on the other side of obedience. You don't need to have every detail mapped out. You don't need to feel fearless, and you don't need external permission. What you need is the courage to honor what you already know, to move with intention instead of hesitation, to trust that every step taken in obedience reshapes your future in ways you may not see immediately, but will one day recognize as necessary. Regret is born from ignored truth, but fulfillment grows from faithful response. And as you choose to listen, to act, and to remain aligned, even when the path stretches you, you step fully into who you were always meant to be, carrying forward not doubt or delay, but clarity, conviction, and a steady commitment to walk the path set before you with purpose, humility, and unwavering trust.